I'm going to assume that today's date is not that significant for you. Unless it's, I don't know, your birthday or something equally important. Otherwise, it's the 24th of April 2016. What's so special about that? For me, it goes a lot deeper, since today marks the 10th anniversary of me opening my channel here on YouTube. Just saying that alone feels so surreal to me. Now, as far as celebrating this day goes, I was considering something like a Draw My Life, like a lot of other channels have done, but I've always been apprehensive about it for two reasons. For one, I don't really consider myself that interesting enough because I've lived a fairly average life. Yeah, there have been a few twists and turns, but that goes on to my second point, which is I've always made an effort to try and keep my online life and my offline life separate from each other because I'm here to entertain you guys. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that there haven't been ups and downs in my life, because there have been, and it's made me the person I am today, but that's not what I'm here for. Maybe I'll do one sometime in the future, but I can't really say right now. So instead, I've decided to do a kind of retrospective of some of the most important videos I've made on my channel. Admittedly, a lot of my early videos haven't aged well over time, and even I look back on them and cringe, but they were an integral part of my history, so let's start from the beginning. I'll also be leaving links to each video in the description below and as an annotation on screen, so without further ado, here we go. So, Sonic of the Wasteland, the first video I ever uploaded to YouTube back in July 2006. Not the first video I ever made, mind you, that one is deep within the depths of my hard drive, and frankly it is staying there. Granted, out of the few people who have seen it, I doubt any of them remember it, and honestly I want to keep it that way. Not because it's bad or anything, it's just I don't think it's good enough for it to be worthy of being remembered. Anyway, Sonic of the Wasteland, where was I? So, YouTube has changed a lot over the years, and back then everybody was subject to the same limitations. Not only could you upload up to 10 minutes of videos, even though I believe the limit was actually 11 minutes, but you were also limited to 100 megabytes with each upload. This is why a lot of older videos on YouTube, 2005, 2006, 2007, maybe even up as far as 2008 and 2009, were really low quality because it was the best you could get back then. This is also the same reason why in the description of my videos I tend to write down what the original file size for it was, because it was just a habit that formed out of being so limited. As to why this video even exists, you kind of have to look back at the climate of YouTube then and what was popular. Back in the day, the one thing that was all the rage was the AMV, or animated music video. The concept was really simple. You took clips from an anime of your choosing and you mashed them up with a song as if the two were supposed to be linked. Simple. Now, going back to my previous point, everyone was limited to about 10 minutes of video, so I wanted to make an AMV that went as close to that limit as possible, potentially creating YouTube's longest AMV. And the longest song that I had in my library at the time was Soldiers of the Wasteland by Dragon Force, at just over 9.5 minutes in length. I could have easily done Through the Fire and the Flames because, let's face it is that one song that everyone knows that they did, but I think even back then I felt that using the song was a little cliched. But my god, the animation that I tried to do on this video with the characters lip-syncing the vocals, you can't even call it animation really. Considering at the time I was still using Windows Movie Maker, which isn't that good at making videos. If you're trying to do frame by frame animation like I was trying to do here, you're only limited to like 12 or 13 frames a second, which really isn't that usable for this kind of thing. I don't even think it even has that consistent a frame rate now that I think about it. So considering I made a near 10-minute long video out of 20 minutes of footage, I'd say I did a pretty decent job for what it was. This is also the beginning of me working under the banner of Prototype Productions, even though it's not that original of a name. A quick Google search shows that there are at least 2 other companies that operate under the same name. Overall, I don't think Sonic of the Wasteland is a bad video, just one that is definitely of its time, but also hasn't aged well. As of writing, it has over 3,000 views, so for a first YouTube video, I'd call this one a moderate success. My next video definitely got a lot more attention. In fact, I'm honestly surprised that it still does to this day. That video is, of course, my Sonic X AMV of Aerosmith's Don't Wanna Miss a Thing. Even though this was my second and last AMV that I did, I think this one's a lot better than Sonic of the Wasteland because I was still learning how to use Windows Movie Maker, and halfway through I realised that doing frame by frame mouth open mouth closed was just not viable in that program, which I suppose is why I say Team 4-Star doesn't use it. That and Windows Movie Maker is a pile of crap, but still. There is also a bit of, I suppose, history to this video as well. Around this time I joined a number of Sonic based internet forums, and one day they had a competition where you could submit fan videos like these, which included AMVs and what you could now call a bridged series. And I can't remember how many people entered, but I believe I came in the top 3, either first or second place. I mean, people loved this video when it came out, which does make me pretty happy. The fact that at the time some random 17-year-old was entertaining people from all over the internet is kind of overwhelming when you think about it. And I guess that's why I still do YouTube to this day. Even if my videos don't get as much attention as they used to, the fact that I can still make one person smile is at least worth it. There's not really that much else to say on this video. I'd say it's aged a lot better than Sonic of the Wasteland, even though it's still not as much as other videos would. Next up, we have easily my most viewed video on my channel, that being Sonic Z1. Sure, almost half of those 68,000 views were in the first 12 months, but to see this video get so popular was just mind-blowing for me at the time. This was obviously after I stopped making AMVs and was inspired by a series called AMV Hell, which was kind of the same thing, but chose to do it more like a comedy. Not quite an abridged series, since those videos rarely, if ever, used original audio or redubbing like what Team 4-Star do, but it does edge towards that. Is AMV Hell still a thing anymore? I mean, I still have a DVD with the first 3 burned onto it, but I'm certain people began to stop caring after that or something, and now it's just its own small community like a lot of early internet groups have become nowadays. Anyway, this video. I do list the sources used during the credits, which, if I was ever to do this video again, I would not have drag on for so long. And as far as the sources themselves go, it honestly feels a little wrong having 2 clips from Robot Chicken as the source audio. 1 would be fine, but I think 2 is pushing it, personally. I'm also somewhat surprised that pretty much no one got the bonus stage reference during the Tails' Gaming Rig skit, although, considering that series was pretty much given the axe around the same year as this video came out, I'd be surprised if anyone still remembers that show. I mean, for its time, bonus stage was actually pretty good, but the guy who made it ended up moving on to other projects, so all the best to him, I guess. Honestly, despite its popularity, I don't think this is among one of the best videos I made. I did work on a sequel a year later, and I don't think it was that good either. Now, the thing that led up to my next video was probably the worst thing I could have done to my channel. And that was simply not making a single video for over 8 months. Because even back then, you needed at least a consistent or frequent upload schedule in order to stay on top of things and have a growing fan base, as it were. But I just had no inspiration to make videos at the time. I was in the middle of making Sonic Z2 not long after Sonic Z1 came out, but I just didn't have that much material to work with, so I kind of just left that project to die. But of course, I, like many other people around 2007, found a little thing called YouTube Poop. And of course, I tried to make my own, but I wanted to be special and only do YouTube poops of Sonic X, even though this was the only Sonic X YouTube poop that I did, and the other ones I did were the overused Mom Luigi and CDI footage. What the hell was wrong with me? Truth be told, I'm not ashamed of this video's existence, but I'm not exactly proud of it either. It just exists. Maybe, like my previous video, I was only held back by the limitations of what I could do, but if I wanted to introduce my channel to a random stranger, this would not be the video I'd play to them. Okay, by this point, I'm going to skip ahead a few videos and talk about specifically significant videos of mine, because if I talked about every single one, we'd be here all day. So,
ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce funky music.
yes, we're back to another Dragon Force video, and I'm going against what I said in Sonic of the Wasteland by using the very song that I didn't want to use in the first place because it was a little cliched. At least here I'm putting a much more original spin on it, I suppose. Now, even though this was the first video of me using it on my channel, the program that I'm using here, that being Music 2000 for the PS1, also known as MTV Music Generator if you live in North America, is actually one that I've used for much longer, since at least 2001, although at the time I just saw it as another game for my PlayStation. But now that I think about it, that game is probably the very reason why I make music in the first place, since that software is so easy to use. Seriously, if you see this game for sale anywhere, I wholeheartedly recommend picking it up. You will not regret it. It's almost crazy to think on how one seemingly insignificant moment can just snowball into something so big and essentially change the course of your life. I mean, if I didn't want to make music back then, I would not be where I'm standing now. Now, as far as making music under the name Not a Number, which is still the name I use today, by this point in time I'd already been making music for about 2 years and had already released an EP, which I have on my channel, but it was nothing more than me poorly playing an acoustic guitar, which I still actually have, by the way. It's sitting right in front of me. But I'd moved away from the acoustic orientated stuff and moved towards more electronic music around late 2007. There are songs that I had made during that time before I made this, but they're staying unreleased for now. This was also the same time I was actually putting together a debut album, which was meant to be this electronica inspired by the likes of Dream Theater and Halloween, which were two bands that I was heavily into at the time. The former I still am. Their latest album is easily my favourite of 2016 so far, and while there is material and artwork for it, it never actually came to fruition because it just wasn't turning out the way I planned it. And now that I do have an album out and have planned so far ahead with what I want to do with my music, it is very unlikely that this cancelled album will ever see the light of day. At least in the form that it's in now. So, production time on this song in particular was about a week. Given the schedule I had, I was only able to work on it for about 2 hours at a time, and that involved putting every single note in one by one. Not like other programs now where you can simply import a MIDI, change some of the instruments, and you've instantly got a song, because Music 2000, even the PC version, does not work like that. This was essentially manually crafting a song by hand, and I think it stands strong because of that. And it seems people still enjoy it because it's managed to get more than 9,000 views. I think by this point my videos were actually starting to become much better. I mean, the cringiness was definitely beginning to subside at this point. And then we come to a first in my channel's history. Yes, this was the very first live action video I had ever created featuring my face, a quote-unquote review of Sonic Unleashed. Now, you kind of have to understand my relationship, as it were, with Sonic games and how Sonic as a series was being viewed at the time. This was still in the wake of the negative reception of the infamous Sonic 06 on the Xbox and 360, and Unleashed was seen as this great comeback of the series, rising from the ashes and reclaim its glory, and at first I was pretty excited for this game as well. Then I saw that that game was going to be significantly 2D, and my interest pretty much died in an instant. But what annoyed me more was that everyone else was praising the ever-loving hell of that choice, saying stuff like this was how Sonic was meant to be and how Sonic has never worked in 3D, as if to say Sonic Adventure 2 and to an extent Sonic Heroes never happened. Granted, I say that with my nostalgia goggles firmly on. Even though I have been playing Sonic since the 16-bit days, it was actually Sonic Adventure 2 that got me back into the series, and I still see that as the best game in the whole franchise. But ever since Shadow the Hedgehog, and maybe to an extent Sonic Heroes, the more vocal of the fanbase were constantly complaining about each new game over the most trivial of things. So, in response, I ended up writing this video as a sort of satire of the perpetually unsatisfied Sonic fanboy that the fanbase was known for. To the point that I was convinced that these guys weren't that into Sonic in the first place and were just joining the bandwagon of Sonic games are bad, lol. What would the video have in the line? What kind of Sonic fan would like a Sonic game? That's just plain stupid. Speaking of the voice, I've no idea what gave me the idea to give the character a Scottish accent, especially when it was such a terrible attempt at one given how I have family from Scotland. But granted, I'm not a voice actor, I can't do voices that well, but I like to think I'm better at it than what I used to be. But what if I told you this wasn't actually the first live action video that existed on my channel? Yes, a little while before Sonic Fan 01 briefly appeared on the scene, I did a video essentially satirizing the show 24. Now, admittedly, I've not watched the show and I've no intention on it, but the premise behind this video was pretty simple. From what I can tell, the show 24 had the gimmick of taking place in real time over the course of 24 hours, but to the best of my knowledge, you don't see the characters doing human stuff, like sleeping or eating a meal, etc. So I filmed myself pretending to be asleep for 5 or so minutes and passed it off as a sneak preview of the then newest season, Season 8 of 24. Now the video itself ended up getting removed, YouTube themselves deleting it despite the fact that it was a parody and no content from the original show, something I'm still a little annoyed about. But after Season 7 of the show aired, I remember this video getting a lot of attention. I remember this video getting upwards of 20,000 views. I mean, it got so much attention that YouTube actually offered me to join their partnership program, but when I applied, not only was I rejected, but they removed the video under inappropriate content. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have titled the video 24 Season 8 Episode 1 Sneak Preview, and even though I contested their decision, they still said no. Thanks for that, YouTube! And as far as how well this video got received, I believe it was equal parts positive and negative, but it was really polarizing. People either really loved it because they saw me mocking a particular trope to the show and saw how ridiculous it was because of that, or they outright hated me because they were promised an exclusive preview to what I would imagine was their favourite show and got something completely different in return. It was the rickroll of my channel in some respects. Would I do this video again? Probably not, but I found it to be a good experience, and hey, it made for a good story for a video like this. So while I did manage to put out a video roughly every month, I'm going to be skipping over a lot of content from here on out simply because, one, I was essentially treating my channel as a dumping ground for whatever ideas I had at the time, be that me playing the Doom 3 theme on my acoustic guitar, or ranting about the rain hitting my window, or my infamous OFFS series on Sonic 4's announcement, which I'll just link you to since I pretty much stand by what I said back then. And two, if I did go over every single video of mine, we'd be here all day. So from February 2009 to May 2010, we jump to the next big series of videos on my channel, that being a Confuzzled Adventure 2010. Confuzzled, for those who don't know, is a furry convention held here in the UK. The location has changed over the years. Recently I believe it's being held in Birmingham, but in this year it was in Manchester. And it was definitely an experience for me because it was the first time I'd ever travelled that far on my own. I mean, I live about 75 miles from Manchester, which is about a 2-hour drive, or in my case a 3-hour train journey, so I was equal parts excited and nervous because I didn't know what to expect. Don't get me wrong, I knew a bunch of people that were going and I stuck with them a while, and I made a few other friends as well, so after I registered, I decided I would go there and document my own experiences as a video diary. I believe in the video I referred to it as a vlogumentary, which just sounds pretentious now that I think about it. I was a bit worried that when I was making it, it might end up being too long. The whole thing is about 40 minutes in length, and I think the reason was that I didn't take enough footage to make it flow better, so I would have minutes of uncut video, which may have made it feel like it went on much longer than it needed to. I did end up kind of solving that problem though, and I'll talk about that video when I get to it, but as far as the event itself goes, I did have a lot of fun, but now that it's been some considerable time, I'm not sure conventions are actually my thing. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to go to Confuzzled in 2017, but it just takes way too much energy out of me. I mean, I am censoring myself a little. I don't really want to go too far into my personal life with this and what was going through my head at the time, especially since I've essentially put those things behind me and have been moving forward from them. Let's just say I was mentally exhausted by the end of it all. I can only imagine what the people running the event were going through. But at the end of the day, I had a bloody good time, and I hope the video showed that. Next up is a video that didn't really get much attention as I hoped, possibly because it wasn't very well edited, given how I was still using my old computer at the time, which was not very powerful. That being what I dubbed the Sonic 2 Guitar Hero Custom, where I attempted to beat Sonic 2 with the controls mapped to a Guitar Hero controller. Now in the beginning of the video I said that what I was doing was something that had never been done before, and I actually did my research beforehand. This did appear to be the first time anyone tried something like this. I kind of wished I had a better computer at the time, since my old computer was severely outdated. It didn't have an external graphics card, everything was being run off the processor, it didn't even have a gigabyte of RAM. By this point the computer itself was over 5 years old, and it would be another 2 years before I finally got a replacement. At least with a better computer I'd be able to properly capture the footage and edit it accordingly, but with what I had, this was the best that I could do. Overall, it was a fun experiment to carry out, and I'd love to do it again, except that I no longer own that controller, so oh well.